All right, here we go. We're going to start into cabinet drafting today. All right, we're going to draw our first cabinet drawing together. Before we do any drawing, and we'll go over this here in the first video of this part. We'll probably break it into like maybe 3 sections. I haven't really planned to head that far yet, but we're probably going to break it up into the research and development phase of the drafting process. So first thing you're going to want to do is go through your drawings, go through your notes, try to review any handoff meeting or handoff meeting notes, locate any information regarding the print that you're about to work on, including what hardware types you're using for your cabinets, like we talked about in the hardware video, self-close, soft close, or free swing. We're going to be looking at that. We'll also be reviewing the takeoff too for any additional notes that may apply to the work that we are going to be drawing. And then we'll be looking at the architectural. So it all kind of ties back to those 3 videos going through the takeoff, the architectural drawings, and the meeting notes in the job folder. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go to Airtable, and we're going to specifically look at the packet tracker drafting schedule. Pull that over here. So on the drafting schedule, the packet that I have reserved for us for training is still on the empty list. I do have to put my name on it so that way I can claim it and make sure nobody else does pick it up. But it's going to be for this project here, Legislative Office Building. So if you don't have that project synced to your machine, you're going to want to sync this project number here, 6415. If you want, you can pause the video, handle that, come back to it here. Anyways, once you have that job folder synced, what we're going to do is we are going to, well, first we're going to put our name on this packet so that way nobody else tries to work on it. So I'll put my name on it. And you'll notice that it will disappear from the empty list as soon as my name is applied to that packet. Let's put that in the drafting column there. Now, I'm going to close out the empty list and go to my list up here. And then you can see Legislative Office Building is located right here. Okay. Now, like we talked about in the original video for the reviewing packet tracker and the material log, you can see that we have some information to review. We have a packet number, which essentially is a work order number assigned to each drawing. So that is our work order number or our packet number here, 45992. You can see that this is sub number 001, which just means that we're dealing with plastic laminate cabinetry today. That's it. Right of that, you have the job number, which is 6415, the job name, which is Legislative Office Building, the print reference, which also ties back to that video too, L1 for laminate cabinetry, print number 1. And then you have your description here, laminate casework, level B1, storage room, B1203. So since I am going to be starting this packet today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch this from available to drafting, meaning that I am actually working on this packet. So I'm switching the status now. My name's on there. That's perfect. To the right of that, you're going to see the architectural reference. This is really important because it's going to take you to the drawing that this elevation view or the drawing that you're working on is going to be located. So we're going to be looking for view number 1 on page I08-01. We'll keep an eye on that here in just a sec. And there's nothing else to take note of here as we look at the list. So before we get into pulling up the drawing, one thing that I also like to do is go to the material log base in Airtable. So we're going to go back up to here, and let's make note our project is 6415. So going back to here, I'm going to scroll down until I find that project number, 6415. Where are you? There you are. All right, so I'm just going to have this open in this tab here. meaning that I can access this pretty quickly. So what I'm doing here is I have this open, so I have the all the materials, the links, material sheet sizes, and all of that in here and ready to go. So if I have a question or need to look something up, it's right there for me. Makes it a lot faster once you get into actually working on the drawing. So the research part of the job, what we're going to do, like we said, we're going to start off by going into the, we'll look at the takeoff, the architectural reference drawing, and try to look at any meeting notes or handoff meeting video recordings to kind of get a feel for what it is that we are going to be working on. This is really important. It usually takes between 15 to 30 minutes. So as you're working on a job, don't feel too bad if you have to take a little bit of time just to get familiarized with the print that you're about to start. It actually will save you a lot of headache later if you actually do have all the information kind of right in your head before you move on to actually drawing the print. So starting off, we know that we're working on level B1. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the Legislative Office Building job folder. Again, if you don't have that synced, you'll want to pause the video and sync job 6415. We're going to go into the drawings folder here. We'll go into architectural next. And the first thing I'd like to do is look for level B1 in the floor plan, partition plan area. So that's up here. And B1 is already right there. So we can just open that up. It's going to open up in Bluebeam here, and we'll be able to look for where print L1 is located on that floor plan. Part of the job setup procedure that I handle at the beginning of each job is to set up these print references, and usually what I'll do is throw a little bubble on the print that tells you exactly what that print is, so you don't have to go comparing two different things to find what you're looking for. Anyways, so looking at the overall floor plan for B1, there's really not a lot here. Really, we only have 2 prints on this floor, actually 3. But anyways, there's 2 prints on this part of level B1. It's split into 2 halves. And we're looking specifically for L1. So L1 is down here in this room. This is your storage room. You can see the L1 bubble is placed right there with an arrow pointing to the side of the room that it's associated with. And then you're going to find that there is in your architectural drawing, they actually have this reference here. This is your elevation call. It's going to take you to the elevation drawing of the cabinet. So right now we're looking at the plan view of those cabinets here. Like the plan view is in the top-down view. Elevation view is up next. That's going to be the front view. So we're going to pull that up. That's I08-01. So let's go back to the drawings folder. We're going to look for I08-01. There it is right there. Let's open that up. And then we need to find, it looks like view number 1. So there's your view number. There's your page number there. So view 1 on that page. All right. And I was already zoomed in because I was looking at this before we started. But view 1 is this bank of cabinets here. So before we even get too much further into this, we can already tell that we're going to be dealing with some upper cabinets. We have, looks like a trash pullout down here, a 2-door base cabinet or a few of those. We have a 4-drawer base cabinet down here. And this looks like it's probably going to be an ADA base cabinet, meaning that the toe kick is going to open with the cabinet doors. So if you're in Loves Park and you want to see one of those in person, there's actually one in the engineering break room to the right of the garbage cans in that drawer stack. There is a, no, actually the trash can cabinet is the ADA cabinet. So if you want to see one of those, there is one there. It's actually made with our old standard of building these, so it's not completely up to date. But you can also probably find those in the shop there too. So anyways, we see that we have that. There is equipment that's going to be placed within these cabinets too, so we need to actually do some research on that equipment and make sure that it actually fits within the space they are requesting. There's also plumbing fixtures too. So you can see plumbing fixture 13. That looks like it's probably our sink. And then the refrigerator is what they're labeling as appliance or AP number 2. There are other appliances in here as well, presumably probably a couple of coffee makers, AP4, and probably a microwave oven, AP3, or maybe a toaster oven here. That's also worth noting, although it doesn't directly interact with our cabinet, so it's not going to be something that we have to pay a lot of attention to. There's also outlets up here as well in the wall, so you can see those. They're kind of vaguely represented with these rectangles with little circles in them, but those are going to be electrical outlets on the back wall behind the at the back of the counter there. Also, taking a look at some of the materials involved with this drawing as well. Let's do that here. So it looks like this here, this P1, this will most likely be paint 1 or wall paint. We can look at the finish schedule in the job and confirm that, but that'll probably be drywall back there. So we might not actually have anything to do with that. That's on the print though from the architect because it affects multiple areas of scope. So although we're mainly focused on just the cabinets and our scope of work, they have to provide information for all the other trades too, including the appliance vendor, the plumber, and the drywallers too. So what we're really going to be focused on though is we want to know what the finish of the cabinets are. So as I'm looking around this elevation view, I'm noticing right here that it says these upper cabinets are going to be called out as plastic laminate 1. And it looks like these lower cabinets actually have a separate finish. These are plastic laminate 2. So we have to be careful about that. We can't just label it all as PL1 or it'll get made with the wrong finish and you don't want to deal with that. But just keep in mind, these are 2 different plastic laminates on the job, and we'll look at those here in just a sec. Other things to look at while you're reviewing a print here is we got solid surface 1 for your countertop. So we're going to look at what that material is as well. And the last finish I'm seeing here is T5. So Onsite doesn't really do any tile work, and T5 is most likely going to be wall tile, like a wall tile backsplash that'll be by others. So on our drawing, when we go to actually draw in the wall here, we'll label it as tile by others on that back wall. So let's look at some of the other items that we have here too. Specifically, let's take a look at some of the dimensions that we're given here. So right away, we could see that we have a filler, which sometimes an architect doesn't always draw the fillers in. So you do have to keep note of that. If you don't see one on an architectural, but you know you need to have one, you have to add it in yourself. This architect actually does have it drawn though, so that's great. There are fillers here on the left and the right-hand side. If I go back to my plan view, just to confirm that we actually need those, it looks like there is a wall. That would be what this guy is. We got a wall that goes on the left and also the right-hand side of these cabinets. So we definitely will need a filler between our cabinet and that wall. Let's go back here. Let's see, anything else worth noting? Well, I can tell you right now that because there is a refrigerator sitting in this opening, we're going to have to make sure that we do label these as a finish end on this cabinet here and a finished end on this cabinet here, because you will be able to see a portion of the side of that cabinet and this cabinet here through the side where the side of where the refrigerator sits. So we're going to label those as finished ends when we get to drawing these. Just make note of that as well. All right. So I did mention we were going to take a look at dimensions on these as well. Sometimes an architect will give you dimensions for every cabinet. Other times they may just say something like this. Now when it says 6 EQ, All that means is that they want these to be 6 equally spaced doors, meaning that each door on this part has to be exactly the same dimension. We'll show you how to do that here in just a moment, but same goes for these cabinets up top. These are 6 EQ, meaning that they're all equally spaced all the way across. Over here we've got 2'10", which is our countertop height from the finished floor to the top of the counter. Looks like they also have a 2 foot or 24-inch gap between the top of the counter and the bottom of the upper cabinets. And the upper cabinets on this side are 36 inches tall. All right, this side here, the upper cabinets are only, 22 inches tall. And one other thing before we get too far, I will get back into the materials with you, but before we get too far, we also need to make sure what's happening here at the top of these cabinets. As mentioned when we kind of looked at the cabinet blocks, if you have drywall or a soffit above your upper cabinets, you do want to make sure that you put a reveal in between the cabinets and the soffit or the ceiling. That reveal will be 3/4 tall, and it'll run the entire length of this cabinet area. But if there is no soffit above these cabinets, or there's nothing blocking the cabinets from being lifted off, a reveal is not needed there. So we are going to take a look at section I0811, view number 6, to be able to take a look at that and see if they do show a soffit above those cabinets. It looks like this would be your section here. Again, we're looking at view number 6 on page I08-11. And so the upper cabinet section that they shows a 1/2 inch reveal. However, we know here at Onsite that our upper cabinets, when we put those in, they need at least 3/4 of an inch for that to be lifted up and put in place when they go to install it. So even though the architect shows this at 1/2 an inch, we do have to modify this to make it a 3/4 inch gap because we can't lift that up and drop it onto the cleats back here with a 1/2 inch gap. It just won't work. So we have to change that, and that's just what it is. It's just a matter of like a lot of times an architect will draw something without the full understanding of how things are built or installed. So they may just put a 1/2 inch there willy-nilly, and then we have to kind of make up the rest of the details as we go. So again, we'll be changing that to 3/4 as we go to draw this later. Let's see, there is a small valance at the bottom, and you can see there is actually a light fixture placed there as well behind that valance right there. So that kind of ties back to our cabinet vocabulary video. See, this cabinet has 2 adjustable shelves in there as well. And you can see where the shelf pins are there. So that's noting these are adjustable shelves. Yep, and the rest of this doesn't really pertain to us too much. So we're going to go back to our elevation view, look at a couple more sections here, and then we will start rolling into materials. So cabinet sections here. Let's take a look at the first one on the left. This is view number 10 on I08-10. I'm going to open that up. You said 10, right? Yep, view 10. Okay. So our suspicions have been confirmed. It looks like they are intending for this to be what's called an integrated toe kick or an ADA toe kick. They are interchangeable like the names are. And they say with a 1/2 inch reveal. What they're meaning is that between the floor and the bottom of that is a 1/2 inch. So that stands with our current standards. We do show a 1/2 inch gap there, so that's actually perfect. Other things worth noting, let's see, sink and faucet is specified. That'll be on the elevation view. It does say melamine at interior surfaces, but it doesn't specify if it's a white melamine or a black melamine, so we might have to make that up. They also are calling for a 170-degree hinge here to allow for maximum ADA clearance. I'll talk about that with you as we go to draw this cabinet. And the other thing worth noting is, let's see, oh, they do show a 1/4 inch gap here That's perfect. Our standard is a 1/4 inch gap at the top of the cabinet, and then any other cabinets below will receive an 1/8 inch gap. So that fits perfect with our standards there. They do show a backsplash here, just a heads up. I'm seeing that here. On the elevation view, I am not seeing that. It just shows a wall there with tile. And I think that's probably just an oversight on their part. I would say that there probably is no backsplash here, but we can look at the takeoff in just a moment and confirm that too. So I need to write that down to make sure I come back to that so I don't forget. So confirm backsplash or not. Got it. Okay, so taking a look at some of these other sections. So one is going to be your drawer stack. Let's take a look at that. Make sure there's nothing there that looks weird or out of place. Okay, so this looks pretty standard. Again, doesn't specify if it's white or black melamine. We'll figure that out. They show the toe kick as 3 inches deep by 4 inches tall. That's pretty typical. Although it's not noted, just like we said before, this top gap here will be a 1/4 of an inch tall. These will all be 1/8 of an inch tall here, all the way down the rest of the way. Nothing else really worth noting on that. That's pretty standard. So we're going to move on to our other section views just to take a look to see what else they would like for us to provide. So this one here, view 4 on the same page, view 4 is down here. It looks like same notes as we talked about before, 1/4 inch gap, 3 by 4 toe kick at the bottom. No specification for melamine color on the inside. And then the backsplash is another one that I think is more or less an oversight on their part. You'll find a lot of times with architects too, they usually use the same section views for every job that they draw. And so a lot of times what they'll do is they'll just have details that are copy paste into one job from the other. And so this detail may have originated from a job that had a backsplash, but this one has tile on the wall, so there probably is no backsplash there. All right. Moving back over here, we have view number 5, which is your presumable trash pullout. It looks like that would be this guy here. So here it looks like they kind of generically show it. They're expecting to see if we can get 2 trash cans in the cabinet. We'll mess with that. I'll show you a little document I have that kind of explains whether or not you can have that or not. Depends on the size of the cabinet, the depth, height, and width of that cabinet. Otherwise, all the same notes are applying here. 3 by 4 toe kick. Let's see, no specification on melamine. And backsplash, again, same note. It's probably an oversight, but we'll take a look at it. All right. We have checked out all the section views through here. So next, what I would like to do with you is kind of go through the finishes that we are providing on this elevation. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to kind of split screen what we're dealing with here. I'm going to close that side menu so I can do this a little easier. And on one half of my screen, I'm going to show the material log, and the other half of my screen, I'm going to show the elevation view. And that way we can kind of explore what these different finishes are. So let's start with PL1. PL1 is what we're using on the upper cabinets here. See, PL1 is there. You look at that, and actually, if there's any discrepancy between what the on-site call is and what the architect call is, you can kind of translate that with these 2 columns here. So anyway, PL1 is the same. They labeled it as PL1. We're going to use PL1 too. So anyway, let's go over to the link for PL1, and we'll just open that up and see what it is that we're looking at. It's a laminate called Palisade Oak. So that is going to go on all of the upper cabinets. And when you have a laminate such as this one here, this one does appear to have a grain direction to it. So we'll talk about that when we go to draw this, but we're going to also need to include grain direction symbols to let the shop know if the wood grain is to run vertically or horizontally on the cabinets. Typically on cabinet elevations like this, what you're going to see is you're going to most likely have a vertical grain direction on the cabinet itself. And that would be pretty standard for us. If the base trim is also grained below the cabinets on the floor, usually we'll run that horizontally. The reason that we do that is because these sheets of laminate usually come with the grain running on the long side, because what happens is typically most laminates, which I look at this down here, we'll see if they give us the different sizes that it comes in. And of course, we got to know what finish it is that we're looking at. It looks like we are looking at finish 38. So finish 38. These are the different different sizes you can buy that laminate in. But the important thing that's worth noting is that most laminates, the grain direction is going to, or the grain is going to follow the long side of that sheet. So if we were going to use like the typical 4x8 sheet of laminate, the grain's going to run parallel to the 8-foot side of that piece of laminate, and that's pretty typical. Sometimes you can buy it with what's called short grain, meaning that the grain can run parallel to the 4-foot side, but it's kind of a rare case when that does happen. So it's almost safe to assume that most times than not, your grain is going to run the long side of your cabinet or base trim down there in this case. So unless specified otherwise by an architect, if you have a laminate with grain direction on it, you will want to run your cabinet doors vertically and your base trim horizontally. And that's standard across the board. Sometimes they may fight you on that, and they may actually say, hey, I actually want my grain to go all vertical, even on the base trim, in which we can do that. But because of how this laminate usually works, usually we have more joints in the base, meaning that we'd have to have a line every 4 feet on that base trim, which is going to look real ugly. So we try not to do that. All right, so that's the laminate used for the upper cabinets. Moving on to what we're using for the lower cabinets, that is what's called PL2. So let's go over here. Let's find PL2. PL2 is here. That's Wilsonart Blackbird. And we'll pull up the link so you can see the preview of what it looks like. All right. So it's kind of, this one is not grained, I would say. It's kind of more of like a crisscross hatch type pattern. Anyways, so that's what the lower cabinets and the base trim are going to be. They're going to be PL2, which is this Wilsonart Blackbird laminate. Let's look at the countertop too and see what that is. SS1. SS1 is right here. Pull that up and see what it looks like. Tumbled stone. Okay. So kind of basic looking. That's your countertop though. And again, you can either see the sizes that it's available on their website by going to pattern availability, and it'll give you the sheet size right there. Or if you look at the material log, I try to do this for you guys to make sure that it's easier for you to be able to access this information. But you can see that these sheets come in 30 inches by 144 inches, and they are a 1/2 inch thick. So when we go to draw that, we have to remember that 1/2 inch thick is really important. That applies to stone, solid surface, quartz, and all of the types of countertops like that. You kind of have to pay attention to what the thickness of the material is because it will affect the way that you draw the countertop in the drawing later. So we do know that it's a 1/2 inch thick. That's perfect. That's all we need to know. That is all the finishes that we're going to be dealing with. So we have PL1, PL2, and SS1 here. We also need to figure out what the pole is on the job. So we can see they have these poles labeled on the cabinets right now. I scroll on over to the hardware section of the material log, we can kind of get a glimpse as to what we're dealing with here. It does look like And it may be hard to really know what these are at first, but what you're looking for really is the word pole on this. So if you need to know what the pole for the job is, it should be in the handoff meeting, but also you can find it here in this material log here. So out of the hardwares that are on this list, it looks like there is only one pole, which is hardware 53. Hardware 53 looks like this. Pull up the preview of that. Okay, so it's the DP128 pole by Doug Mockett. So it's a bar pole, kind of like the one we looked at with the cabinet hardware video. And so we'll mount them the way that they have them shown here. We're going to go, when we go to draw that, we'll make these 2 inches down and 2 inches in from the side, mount it vertically. On drawers, we're going to go in line with the center of the cabinet, and we're going to move them down 2 inches from the top of the drawer. Okay, so that's pretty much all the hardware and finishes that we're going to be looking at here for research here on this part. We did note that the hinge on this specific cabinet needs to be the 170-degree opening hinge, which is a self-close hinge. I'll do a little bit of research on the project and just see, but I think everything else will be self-close as well. So, all right. That's kind of exploring the architecturals, getting familiar with that, doing a little bit of research using that reference as well as the material log to reference what the materials are that you're going to be using. What you want to do next is you will want to go back to that job folder, and we'll start back at square one here. So we're back at 6415 Legislative Office Building. In that contract pricing folder, that is where the takeoff lives for the job. So if you go in there, and we'll go to this Excel file here. This again is essentially the receipt from the estimating department where they provide all the detailed information about the scope of work that they have priced. To find the nitty-gritty information about the print you're working on, you're going to want to go to what's called the MTO tab down here. All right. Within the MTO tab, there's a lot of information in here. This is actually a pretty big project compared to the 14th and Spring project we looked at as our example one earlier. But these are typically going to be sorted in a way where the floor number is what's sorted first, meaning that it's going to go from basement or first floor and up. So here we're on basement level 1, which is the room that we're working in. And we know what our arc reference is because we have it pulled up over here, as well as here on the floor plan. This is I08-01, view number 1. And so as I'm looking at this, I'm looking for that room specifically, which is the storage room on level B1. And I'm looking for that arc reference here. So that would be this one here, the one on I08-01. It's really nifty. It's right at the top of the page. So I'm just going to highlight these for right now so I could kind of look at this with you. We'll go all the way over here. Now, there was a note here about soft close hinges and slides on this takeoff. During the handoff meeting that we did confirm we were going to be switching to self-close hardware, so we will kind of be ignoring that note here. A lot of times soft close is more expensive actually, so they will price it differently when they think that we have it on the job. So we're going to try to get by with using self-close hinges on the job for now. If you do go to the handoff meeting, which I'll show you where that's located here, you'll be able to see that in that meeting recording. All right. Sorry. So, goodness gracious. All right. So looking at this, kind of refresh ourselves on what we've looked at before when kind of translating and interpreting what's on the takeoff. We're going to look at this side by side with our elevation view, so I can kind of go through this one by one with you. It'll make a little more sense than what we did before because now we have the actual reference of a drawing with an actual takeoff. So let's take a look at this. So we have, let me scroll just a little bit to the right. Okay, there we go. So over here in the description column, let me try to make sure I can see everything here. All right, in the description column, you can see that this describes exactly each part of the drawing that you're going to be working on. So you see plastic laminate upper, one door, medium size cabinet. You don't really have to pay attention to the medium part. That's just them pricing it differently. But you can see that under quantity here, it says there are 2 of these one door upper cabinets. So if you look back at your elevation view, you can actually see those 2 one door upper cabinets right there where I put the green check marks. Okay, so going back into this again, we have plastic laminate upper 2-door cabinet, and there's 4 of those drawn. Just double check and make sure. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. There's also one up here too, which I'm assuming is priced differently. Yep, it's right there. PL upper 2-door small. So that would be the next one there. And there's a quantity of 1, meaning that that's got to be it right there. Okay. Moving on down the list, they have the solid surface 1, Wilsonart countertop. Sink is not in contract. That's what NIC stands for. So not in contract means that it's by somebody else. So the sink is by somebody else, but we do own the countertop. All right. It says below that we have a subtop, 3/4 thick water resistant plywood, which checks out. That'll be below the countertop there. Then you have your PL 4-drawer base cabinet. There's one of those, meaning that that would be this guy there. You have your PL 2-door medium base cabinet. There are a quantity of 3 of those according to the takeoff. So that would be this guy, and this guy. Oops, there we go. And then going back here, we have the plastic laminate base trash pull-out drawer. There's a quantity of 1 of those. That would be this one there. Then you have your, they did put an allowance in. If we end up buying the trash cans, which we usually do, they put an allowance in to make sure we had enough money to pay for those trash cans when we do buy them. Below that, you have your plastic laminate handicapped sink base, which actually is this ADA cabinet right there. We've talked about that. And then they have a line item. This is for your poles. The Doug Maka DP128 poles. That's all of these guys across the board. They put a quantity of 25 of those. I'm not going to count them, but I'm assuming they got it right there. And then you have your hinges and slides, which again, we're going to go with self close on this project instead of soft close. But yeah, they have a quantities for each of those there as well. Okay, so that's kind of reading the takeoff when it comes to that. If you want to look at some things too, we can look at the exclusions at the bottom. It's going to take a little bit of scrolling to get there. But the exclusions at the bottom are going to tell you a little bit more information about what's going on with this job too. So it might tell you information that relates to other drawings. This is all a generic list that relates to the entire job altogether. So there may be things that you may not have to pay attention to. But you can see like here, we do not have outlets, ports, or any other devices like data and telephone in our scope, meaning that these outlets on the wall here are by others, and that's pretty normal. We don't do any electrical work, so that's going to be by somebody else anyway. Let's see, anything else that pertains to us? PF7 through PF15 plumbing fixtures and associated piping, meaning that PF13 is included in that as part of the job that we do not have as part of our scope. So that sync is somebody else's deal. Let's see. Food service equipment and appliances, meaning that all of the appliances that are on this drawing are going to be provided by somebody else. So again, just like the sink, we're going to label those as by others later when we go to draw those. Whoops. Okay. There are no logos on this drawing, so you don't got to worry about that. Here we go. This one relates to us too. Tile, trim, and substrate at tile locations are by others. So that pretty much just means this T5 that's here is by somebody else. We are not going to be doing anything with that except for putting cabinets above and a countertop below. Anything else? I don't think so. I think we're good on this. Just double checking to make sure there's no other notes that pertain to anything we're dealing with here. Nope. Nope. Nothing there. Okay. And the rest of that is just base contract. They call it boilerplate information, just meaning it's like pollution insurance, parking cost, different things like that will get added to the bottom. All right. So now we have a pretty good idea of what it is that we're drawing. We have our plan view, we have our elevation view, we've looked at all of our section views, we've reviewed the takeoff and reviewed the materials from the material log to understand what we're working with when we go to draw this. If you want to know more about the appliances, a lot of times what you'll see, and this job is a little different, but a lot of times what you'll see in the job folder is that there will be an appliance or equipment schedule. Now, I think that what they did for this project is instead of having a separate page with that equipment on it, what they have done is, let's go back to our elevation view here. What they've done on this job is they've actually put the appliance schedule on the cabinet elevation drawing. So it's actually in the top right corner of page I08-01. It's a little bit unusual, but it is up there. So if you need to look up any of the appliances that you're going to be using on your drawing, you can find that here. Other times it will be on a separate page called the schedules, equipment schedules, appliance schedules. They're going to use a few different names for that, but it will be in the architecturals somewhere. If it's not on the architecturals, we will request it at the beginning of the job. So the architect should be providing that information to us. And even though we are not supplying any of these appliances, what we need to do is double check the dimensions that they have provided to make sure that the equipment will actually fit within the space they are requesting. If it does not fit, we'll talk about what to do there. We'll just usually put a note to let them know, hey, we've looked at this. This refrigerator will not fit below this counter, blah, blah, blah. We'll put something like that on the drawing. Just to give them a heads up, because a lot of times you'll see an architect is so busy they may not even look at that. And so what we'll do is we'll help them out by putting that on our shop drawing if we notice a discrepancy there. So the last thing that you're going to want to do before jumping into a drawing is you are going to go to the job folder once more. Start back here at the beginning again. And you're going to want to go to your drawings folder, and under meeting notes, there will typically be a Word document that covers the scope of work on the building. There's typically going to be a recording in there as well. Sometimes there will be multiple recordings depending on the size of the job. This job in particular is going to have probably 3 or 4 recordings for the job. This first recording that's in here is what's called the handoff meeting. This is the handoff meeting part 1, which only goes over level B1 and level 1 for the project. So far, that's all we've reviewed with the project management team on the job. And we have another meeting following up later this week that we're going to be going over more of that project. So usually we try to cover as much as we can at the beginning of the job. In this case, we're going to break it up because this job doesn't install for quite a while. So we're breaking it up into parts to make it easier to make sure we cover everything in the meeting. Anyway, aside from all that, after you've reviewed the takeoff, the architectural drawings, the material log, you'll want to come to this folder here and kind of take a look at these notes and take a look at the handoff meeting recording and just kind of breeze through that, give it a listen, try to see if there's any notes that apply to the drawing you're working on. And if there are, write them down. Make sure that you have your list at your desk of the different things that you need to make sure you cover for the project or for the drawing you're working on. All right. So I think that's all that I have here for the research and development part of starting a drawing. It does take some time, like I said at the beginning, so don't be too flustered if going through this takes 15, 30 minutes or so to understand what you're about to draw. It's really important that you do that before jumping into something, because if you don't, especially if it's something more complicated, there are probably going to be things you'll miss just because you kind of race through it. If you don't really fully understand at the beginning, you're just going to miss some things. So it's better to take a little bit of time at the beginning to understand what it is you're working with, including the materials, the hardwares, just the concept that the architect is looking for in general, and then what is part of our scope and what is not part of our scope. All of that is really important, and you take like a little bit of time at the beginning to review that, and then that'll set you up for success as you go to draw the print. So that's all I'm going to cover in this video. The next one, we will start working on drawing a print in the AutoCAD model space. So that's what you should expect. The next one, we'll jump into that here right after.